Okay, so it should be broadcasting right now.
Okay, so I'm Tina McGowan.
Okay, and I'm Erin Scoresby. Of course, I'm sure she already knows that by now. But
She
we
still
got,
said we had to, so we're gonna.
okay, so there's our names. Perfect. Okay, so I guess we could just kind of start on the questions.
Okay. Um, so I don't know, maybe it was just me, but like my answers were really long on the majority of these questions. So I don't know if we'll be able to go through. I not that we won't be able to, but I don't think that necessarily we'll want to go through every detail. Maybe I don't know
Oh, that's
because
okay.
like my first answer is 9 bullet points, and
Uh,
they're long bullet points. So I
mine
don't
is
know if you want to know.
like half a page, so
Exactly. So, okay. So we'll just kind of sum up, I guess.
sure, yeah. And I guess this question's kind of in two parts. In fact, most of them are in like two or three parts.
Yeah.
So well, let's see. So the first one is what doctrine of Wilber's heart drove him to advocate? Why is the doctrine of the family so important to have in your heart to be passionate and persistent? Um, I could just kind of do the first one, I guess, the first part of the question to
Okay.
sum up what I said. So, the first thing that I wrote wasn't really a doctrine necessarily, but I think one of the big things that drove him to advocate was just kind of like all the stories that he'd heard, and when he went on that slave ship and kind of actually kind of experienced, not really experienced it, but kind of saw firsthand what they kind of went through on that ship. I think just with all those things in his memory, I think it would be so hard to not advocate. I mean, just knowing kind of what they'd gone through, I think that'd be enough for me to advocate. But anyway,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, but anyway, so I think, but like as far as doctrine goes, I think he had a firm belief that all men are created equal and that we're all children of God. And so I think um, he realized that these slaves are children of God too. They don't deserve to be treated this way, and so we need to do something about it. And so he just thought it was immoral, um, and I think let's see, and I think the other thing that I wrote was I think he believed that advocating for the slaves and trying to get it abolished was he kind of felt like it was kind of his duty in a way, like maybe it was his calling in life to that God kind of gave him this calling to protect them and to abolish the slave trade. And so I think that's another thing that drove him. Um, so anyway, that's what I put. I don't know if you put anything different, but
So I put, I mean, most of my answers were the same, but there was one thing that, I put the doctrine of family, that like he had a strong doctrine of family and that he was aware that, the slave trade was ending families and ripping them apart. And so I think that that was one thing that motivated him was like his knowledge of families that God had intended that he would, he wanted to allow all of God's children to keep their families. Um, and then like the second part of the question, it says, what's the doctrine of family? Why is it so important to have in your heart to be passionate and persistent? And I put a lot of things, but the one thing that I think applies well here is that um, I'll just read it. With moms, you often hear about like the mama bear instincts. This is the kind of persistence that holding a doctrine like family in your heart can bring. You'll fight to the end to make sure that what is right or fair comes to pass.
mm-hmm.
So I think like his desire came from the doctrine of family. And that's really what kind of kept him going through the times when he didn't want to. Because in the movie, he kind of stopped advocating for a period of time and then he fell in love. And once he fell in love, like with Barbara, he was like, I have to go back to this. I can't just stop. So I think that that really brought him a little more strength and perseverance.
Yeah, that's great. I didn't think of it that way, but because I mean I don't really know much about it, but I know that the slave trade was just awful and the families they were taken away from each other. And I think that's great. I love how you mentioned that he kind of went back to it after he married Barbara. And um,
Mm-hmm.
I think that really helped. That's awesome. Um, I think I put what did I put? I put that it's important to have the doctrine of the family in our hearts, and to be persistent and passionate, because um, I think that if we're not persistent and we're not passionate, we wouldn't make a difference. I mean, if we weren't really persistent and passionate, we would probably just give up. Like, as soon as it got hard. And I think what I really liked about what Wilbur did is he was still, I mean, he kind of did give up initially, I think, for a little bit, but just because it had taken so long and it had taken so much out of him, but he still went back at it. He never truly gave up. And I think that's just something we need to do, like, as family advocates. You know, it's just, we won't get anything done if we just give up, and if we don't have that passion. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I put, I guess, for that one.
Yeah. And I think, like, through compassion, because that's something else I wrote a lot about, like, on the second portion of the question, you know, through compassion we develop a passion. So I think, like, for example, I know I always go back to this, but it's like the only thing in my life that I'm actually passionate about. Interracial marriages, and like how that opens, like, for me, like, that opened my eyes to something that I never saw before. You know, the troubles and, like, the racial tension and stuff going on in society today. Like, it was something that I think that my eyes were closed to. And then after I married my husband, it was something that now, because I'm worried for my husband, like, I have all this compassion for my husband, I'm now becoming passionate for the racial movements and stuff that are happening now, obviously within limit, because some of them are ridiculous, but it has opened my eyes, and I am now more passionate through my compassion for my husband. So I think, you know, at the beginning of the movie, Wilbur was like, I want to do this, and then he found God, and he was like, I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore. And then after he met that freed slave, whose name I can't remember, after he met him, and, you know, he kind of had an encounter with that guy, he was like, you know what, I kind of think that this is something I can do through God. Like, once he had the compassion for that gentleman, he became passionate again for the abolition. So
yeah, that's really cool. I agree. I mean, I think especially when he went on that slave ship, and he was I think his name was Equiano. I think that's his name. And he was, like, showing him, okay, this is where they sleep. This is kind of what happens to them, you know, if they're sick, and this is where the women are taken, you know. It was just, I think he started really, like, that's when he really started having compassion, like, oh my gosh, this is what they went through. And that's when I think, yeah, I love that. When you have compassion, and then after that, you know, passion really follows after that. So, yeah, that's really cool. I like that.
all right, let's go on to the second one. I struggled on this question because
I know, me too.
Bronfenbrenner's, like, and even though I'm studying it in 2 classes this semester, and I just took a final yesterday where I had to basically break down Bronfenbrenner's systems, it's just not sticking in my head. But
are you taking family?
Luckily, I'm sorry.
430.
430, yeah.
Okay, I took that last semester. That was hard. Anyway, go on. I understand.
It's just, you'd think I'd get it. I did it in 2 classes this semester, but I'm still struggling. Anyway, so how did Wilbur employ a theoretical approach to become a more effective advocate and identify at least one thing in each system he did and be specific? So in the micro system, which is, like, you know, it's for the individual families, or, like, individuals in their families, I put that the slave trade ripped families apart and caused a lot of unnecessary deaths, and the slave trade caused a lot of dangerous working conditions throughout the British Empire. In the meso system, I said that communities are being affected by the trade through the destruction of the family unit, and death was imminent and led to more Africans being transported because more were dying, so they had to fill those places. And for the exo system, I put, because of the slave trade, horrible working conditions that wouldn't otherwise be employed allowed for a lot of extra work to be done, which led to more products being produced. Because if they had seen the Africans as humans, they wouldn't have worked in such dangerous conditions, and therefore production would have been slowed down.
Right.
And then without the slave trade, the upper class British would fall from their high pedestal. And that was the concern that we saw most of them having in the Parliament meetings, was that they were worried about their money rather than about the lives of people, but whatever.
So sad.
It is. It's. I could go on and on about this. So when I found out that's what this movie was about, I was like, I can do this forever.
I know.
In the macro system, I said that the slave trade was normal. In the movie, one man even said, "We have no evidence that the Africans themselves are against the slave trade." Society saw Africans as less than humans, so it wasn't against their religion or societal beliefs to treat them as such. Which is so sad. Like, they're people.
I know, and I guess we live in a totally different age right now, and so it's just we were taught totally different, but these people, they were taught, but when they were young, about Africans and who they are, and so and that they're just slaves, they're not really people, and I think that's just that's just how they were taught, so that it's really awful, but I mean I think that's just what they knew, so.
And exactly, and that's like where the macro system, where it plays into the macro system, is because it was normal. It wasn't. I mean, just like to us, slowly, gay marriage is becoming normal. It's not something that is even in society seen as a bad thing anymore. Whereas eventually, that's kind of how. While it's like towards the end of the slave trade, everybody's eyes are being opened. Now we're to the point where everybody's eyes are being closed on the subject.
Yeah.
And so,
well, hopefully, if we ever go back the other direction, I don't know. It'll take a while.
Maybe.
Too, but well, I doubt we will. Like in our other group meeting, we probably won't go back the other direction. But.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So, did you have any ideas that were a little different as it pertained to those?
Actually, I did. I kind of took a different approach to the different systems with it, and I will admit I struggled. So I just on a couple of the systems, but I'll just kind of put what I wrote, and I focused kind of more on. Okay, are we calling him Wilbur or William? Because I wasn't sure because they called him both. Oh, I guess I'll just call him Wilbur.
I just called him Wilbur throughout.
Okay, because I know his first name is William, I think. Anyway, whatever. Mm-hmm. So that's irrelevant. But so I put for the microsystem, I just put that he had a lot of help from his peers, like his his friends, like William Pitt to help him advocate, and I think they were really big, huge influences on him. Like William Pitt, he specifically helped him realize that he could be a politician and he could serve God at the same time, kind of use both of that to accomplish what he wanted. And he was also found by many different people, like Equiano and those other individuals that were brought to his house that were passionate about the same thing. And so I think all those people that kind of got together, they became his friends, and throughout the movie, they really helped him. And so I think that was kind of the peers part of it, and also his family. I think specifically his wife Barbara, he was a big support to him at the very end, and just helping him finish what he'd started. And so that's kind of what I put for the microsystem, just his friends and family. The mesosystem, I kind of put that. Let's see, what did I write? That kind of during those meetings, I think sometimes he had both his family and his friends, so he kind of brought those two together to kind of help him with his advocating. And another part could be that he got together with other individuals like Equiano that were brought to him by William Pitt, so kind of him bringing those two together. In the exosystem, I had a hard time with this one, but I think part of it is mass media, and they didn't really have media like we do, but they used other things like Equiano's book, that was kind of a mass thing, I'd say, to kind of help with that. and the macro system. And I don't know if this would be considered an advocating effort for the macro system, but it was at the end they kind of used what was it? It was an attack on the French or something, and the flags, they were going to change the flags, and so I was wondering if they used that to help abolish the slave trade. So I kind of thought that, but that's kind of what
I can see how that fits. Yeah.
I wasn't sure. Like I said, I took that class too last semester, and I struggled with it. I feel like I need to take like 3 or 4 or 5 classes on it to totally get it. But anyway, so yeah, that's kind of what I think.
So I can see how that fits, because like the macro system is like really big, and I was thinking like just in terms of the slave trade, and you were thinking just in terms of the advocacy, which after I read the question, I'm like, oh, I kind of did this wrong. But they weren't able to succeed going head on, so they kind of went through a back door, and they involved the bigger community, not just Britain and not just Africa. They were like, hey, America and the French are in this too.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I put that there. I just thought maybe that would be a part of the macro system. But anyway.
Yeah, that really fits. Like a lot better than what I said. No, I'm not changing my answer. I've already submitted.
I haven't submitted mine yet. I still need to like revise it and make it sound
better. My gosh. Yeah. I spent 2 hours just writing this, so I'm not touching it.
Anyway, okay, so should we do question number 3?
Yes. How did Wilbur and his fellow advocates do and share their research? What evidence did they provide to persuade those opposing or on the fence? And I put like there were tons of group meetings. Like among those that were in favor of the abolishment, they met often and they counseled about more information. And I feel like that was really beneficial, because then they were on the same page before they went into the parliament meetings. And, kind of amongst themselves in those small groups, they worked out any kinks before they presented it to other people.
Right. I really like how they went to different places across the country to try to gather all the evidence they needed. I thought that was really cool too. But yeah, the meetings I think were great because they were able to get on the same page and work together that way. So.
Yeah, and I liked what they did, and you would think that this would hold more weight, but it didn't. Like they had firsthand accounts of the African slaves, like that they had written down and brought, and still Parliament was like, we don't know if they like it or not, so we can't say anything. I'm like, but you have evidence.
That was too bad. Yeah, I thought that was awesome. I feel like they were just making any excuse they could to like not abolish it. But
yeah.
I put that, let's see, they talked to John Newton. Was that his name?
Mm-hmm.
John Newton? Yeah. He used to be the captain of one of the slave ships. And, and I think later on in the movie, he wrote down, like, everything, right? Like, yeah, and I think that was part of it, too. And didn't they talk to doctors, too, that had treated the slaves?
I'm sorry, you went out there for a second. What did you say?
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah. It's just like every like other word sometimes I'm not catching. I just fill it in with my imagination.
Well, maybe I'm.
And that's probably me because my internet service is not the best out here. So.
Well, maybe it's because I'm also in my basement. So I'm in a basement, so I could probably. Well, maybe in a minute, if it gets too bad, I'll just move upstairs. But what I said was, I think they interviewed doctors that had treated the slaves. I think I caught that. I don't remember, but
I think that they put that like in their manifestos and stuff, like that was just like kind of brushed over in their evidence.
Right. Yeah. And then Equiano's book, I think that was pretty hard evidence of just everything that he went through. So I feel like they had a lot. I don't understand why it wasn't like, I don't know why they didn't.
Yeah, I I guess again, different time, but I'm so evidence and factually driven that like if someone had presented to me a firsthand account, I would be like, oh my gosh, this is gospel. We need to change our lives. So I guess that's just
yeah.
me.
Well,
But
especially people are saying the same thing too.
yeah, exactly. It's not just one. But one thing that I thought was really profound and kind of like eye-opening was when they arranged that boat tour and they took those guys on those families, those men and women on a tour, and it was like it was a slave ship that they were on, and he and the smell, and he was like, 600 Africans were put on this boat. By the time they made it to the West Indies, there were only 200 living. And like that smell that you smell is the smell of death. Like that's the smell of those Africans that died.
Yeah.
And I feel like because the firsthand accounts and the other evidences that they had from the doctors and stuff, since that wasn't working, he was like, what can I do? I know. I'll make them smell the smell of death, and maybe that will open their eyes.
Well, and I think it worked. I mean, at least for some of the people, because you could see like the women were crying, and I mean, I think it really started to kind of hit home for them. Like, my goodness, this is awful. Like, we need to change things, and I think probably, I don't know if this could be evidence or not. They had that petition of, I think it was like 390,000 signatures or something like that, thousands of signatures, and that was proof that like a ton of people, they were actually for this getting abolished. Like they didn't agree with it, like how the slaves are being treated, and still they wouldn't. I mean, and I can't remember what in the movie they said, but they're like, look at the people sign. I mean, most of the people, they're for this getting abolished, and he's like, people or something like that, and as if the people had no say, like,
Yeah. I thought that was interesting because that just spoke to not only how they saw the Africans, but how they saw the commoners in the British community.
Right.
It was like,
yeah.
You think they actually have a say? They have no say in this, just as the Africans' accounts don't matter.
Yeah, I thought that was so sad. And when I kind of watched that, I kind of made this, it's kind of an awful connection, but to like the same-sex marriage thing, like, because most of the United States, I'm pretty sure they're for traditional marriage. I mean, we've seen that, and with the court ruling, it's like they didn't even care that most of us are actually against same-sex marriage, but they just kind of went ahead and did what they wanted. And so I don't know. I know their government's different than ours, but similar, to what happened with the same-sex marriage thing. So,
and that's what that's what I said in like our last meeting or in one of our previous meetings. I don't know if it's the last one, about how like it was, even though it seemed like the majority of people were for homosexual marriage, it what really it came out to be was just the people that were loudest were for it. And so that, because they were louder, they were seen as the ones who were the majority.
Yeah, that's right. I think you did mention that last time. So, gosh, we should probably go on to the next question, but I agree.
We still have a lot left.
Yeah.
All right.
We can just hurry and go through it.
How does the film portray the importance of working together as a group? What has family advocacy group work taught you? Why do you think it is a good idea to discuss your thoughts with your peer each week in the HOA? So I'm kind of like, my opinion's the only opinion. Like, it's the right one. Nobody else can have a different opinion.
I feel that way.
So it was this assignment, like the HOAs are so hard for me because like, there were people in our group that were saying things that I was like, no, that's wrong. Like, you obviously don't know X, Y, and Z, or because my opinions were different than the majority of people in our group, I felt like I was being attacked. And so I was like, this hurts,
Oh, really?
No. It was just like certain things. I was just like, and that's what this group, like this assignment taught me is like, even though we in our group were generally on the same side of the argument, I think that having me have an opposing view or having somebody else have an opposing view to me, I think that really helped me to see that it's not all smooth sailing. Like, I think because we do go to a church school and everybody in our school does have the same views of marriage and family, I think sometimes in the details of things, that's where our opinions are going to be different. But it's not going to happen a lot inside the school. It's mostly going to happen outside the school whenever we have that. So I really appreciated that experience with other opinions that were different from mine, because I'm not used to that in the church, in the school. I'm used to everybody having the same kind of views. Not like that's a bad thing, because we all believe in the gospel or whatever, but it definitely helped me keep my mouth shut and come back with facts instead of just my opinion. Because, there were certain things that I was just like, no, like that's not, I understand why you say that, but there's no factual anything for that. And so that the group work, I think it was far more beneficial than a discussion board. I hate discussion boards. They're dumb.
I do agree.
I don't ever I leave discussion boards thinking like, wow, I wish I could have learned something from that. But like the HOAs, I left them and I learned, like, even within a community that has the same views, there's differences. We're going to have a different idea of how to move forward.
Well, that kind of reminds, like...
I'm so sorry. Someone's calling me.
Oh, that's fine. That's okay. Well, I think...
I didn't hear anything you just said.
Oh, but can you hear me now?
Yeah. It was my phone. Oh. Someone was calling me, so...
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, what I was just saying was I kind of like what you said, how even in the LDS community, or where we all believe the basic things, I think, have very similar opinions. We will still have different opinions as well on some things, and I kind of think that's really similar to, like, I don't know, this is a weird comparison, but it reminds me of like marriage and stuff, where we have, like, we go in, and my husband and I, we have basically the same views of most everything, but when it comes down to little things like where the best place to live is, I don't know, like, we'll all totally have different opinions on it, so we'll still have different opinions on little things too, and so
yeah,
it's good to be able to talk those through, and I think it kind of helps you, learn how to deal with that when you're with somebody who totally views something like totally different than you, and it helps you kind of handle it, and I don't know, and so yeah, I think the group meetings are good for me. Mostly, I think it was just good to see other people's perspectives on things, you know what I mean? And just kind of, it kind of helped me, I don't know, I guess with the material, I had a hard time understanding some of the things, and I feel like the group meetings kind of helped me understand the material better as well. Like, with things I didn't understand, I feel I was more enlightened, I guess.
Yeah, and I agree with that.
Than me, so
absolutely. And something that I noticed in the movie was that it seemed like in the beginning Wilbur was trying to go at it by himself. Like, he did have a group of people with him, but it seemed more like he was in the thick of things by himself. And then and I think that that's probably why he got sick, because I think he was trying to do it alone, even though he had a support system. And I know that's kind of an oxymoron, but like, you see that sometimes where people are like, I want to help you. Oh, I've got it. Thanks. Even though they're there to support you. And I think that once he was able to step back from that and do it, like, allow help from them, I think that that's why he was able to be a little more beneficial at that, the second go round.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree he was trying to go by himself. I mean, wasn't it William that actually brought all those people to his house? I'm pretty sure, wasn't it that he's kind of like saying, you definitely need help. You should do this, but you need help, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, he did go at it alone, but I think it was a lot more effective when he had people that were there supporting him, and he actually let them support him. So
exactly. And so that's like, And I think that the movie did a really good job of showing the importance of allowing the group effort to allow change to happen.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Should we do the next one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What parallels do you see between Wilbur and Captain Moroni in Alma 46? What is a Christian and professional family advocate? And how did Wilbur exemplify that? How can you be effective and Christ-like against such loud and often degrading voices?
Oh, go ahead.
So
Sorry.
Wilbur, oh, my bad. I was just going to say, like, Wilbur and Captain Moroni both knew that they were, like, facing danger and, like, a hard road. But they didn't stop. Like, they were like, this is what's right. This is what Heavenly Father stands for. This is what I stand for, regardless of what's going to come my way.
Let's see. Let me just see what I wrote. I put that they both had righteous desires and had faith in God, that He would help them accomplish what they needed. And I feel like they both had integrity. I don't think they didn't care what others thought of them. Like, I think Wilbur, he went through just a lot of he got a lot of backlash for what he was doing, but he still persisted, and I think that just kind of it just shows his integrity, and same with Captain Moroni. I think that this was kind of a weird connection that I made, but I feel like Captain Moroni's title of liberty and that petition that Wilbur made, I feel like they're kind of just symbols of what they believed in, you know. And so, anyway, those are just kind of the things that I wrote down. That they were just both persistent, they were both passionate. They didn't care what others thought.
Yeah, that's an interesting comparison. I didn't think about that. Something I did kind of notice was that in Britain, and again, like I said, throughout the whole movie, I was kind of doing a research, as I was watching the movie. And one thing I noticed is that at that time in British history, it was highly Christian. Like, Wilbur wasn't abnormal in being a Christian, but what the comparison that I made and like the thought that I had was that it seemed like the other members of the parliament were they were checking their religion at the door, and like, I made a comparison to Elder Holland's Israel talk, because I believe that Wilbur made an effort and a conscious decision to continue to carry his religion as he entered Parliament, and rather than checking it at the door and being like, this is just worldly stuff that we're dealing with, he carried his religion with him into Parliament and thought everything we do brings glory or dishonor to our Heavenly Father. So in this room, I need to have God with me more than outside of this room.
Yeah,
not maybe more, but
yeah, no, that's a great connection. I think that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, because he realized that he could, he could serve God, and he could, he could abolish the slave trade, and I feel like the whole time he was trying to, he had God with him, and he was trying to. He didn't. I like what you said, how he didn't like abolish his values or anything. He stuck with his religion, and so. Yeah, I think that's a great example. And then there's another part of the question too. Just what was the question? What is a Christian and professional family advocate, and how did Wilbur exemplify that? And how can you be effective in Christ-like against such loud and often degrading voices? Well, I didn't put a whole lot for this. I just put that I think being an effective family advocate and Christian just means being respectful and understanding of other people's opinions. I think Wilbur exemplified that because, he wasn't nasty to people like the other people were to him. He was respectful, and but he was still effective. I mean, I think we lose, like you said, he didn't check his religion at the door. He didn't get nasty like everybody else was. He was still staying Christian. He was still being Christ-like the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
So
I agree with that. And that's something I said was like, he exemplified it because he stood up for what was right, regardless of what was done to him. And I think that's like that. Yeah, I guess that's a good stopping point. Like I could go on, but for time's sake, I'm
not even sure how long we've been.
Okay. I don't know. I think it's supposed to be like 45 minutes, and I don't know what time we're at.
Oh, I don't know. I think we started around 1:35-ish, 1:40.
Okay. So we're close to the end.
Yeah.
Question number 6 is my answer is real short, and maybe yours is a little longer, but Marcia Barlow spoke on persuasive speaking and writing. Did Wilbur and others exemplify any of Marcia's ideas? How so? I think they used storytelling, and they also didn't base everything on religion. They used facts.
Mm-hmm.
They used data and evidence that wasn't just religion based. I'm sorry, my head's starting to hurt. Every speech came with a story or observation of the slaves and what they were doing. Like it wasn't just it wasn't like slave trade is wrong. It was more like slave trade is wrong. This is what an African slave in the West Indies says,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like so stories and then facts. He used both. Just getting all that. That's basically what I put. That he knew the importance of telling stories, and he used all the stories like from slaves and other accounts of people that witnessed it to really prove his point. And I think I remember Sister Barlow talked a lot about making connections, like with people's emotions, and I think he did that quite a bit with his speeches, and especially when he took those people on the boat, and then you could see that he was really connecting, with people.
Yeah, and I put that on there too. Was like, and I used that as well, that example, because I feel like that was a very, very effective method.
Yeah, definitely.
Question 7, just rushing along. And, that's my answer. That's not the question. What role did the government, policy, and religious freedom play in the fight of the slave trade? Did you see their political system being pro-family? Why or why not? Answer all of the questions.
I had a hard time with the last part of the question, but the first one wasn't so bad.
Yeah, but I didn't think that their policy seemed pro-family at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like they seemed more pro-self. And I guess I can't say at all. It seemed like the majority of everybody was just focused on their own family. And, like one of the people was worried about losing his investment and what that would do to his family. So I guess kind of in a way they were pro-family, but it seemed more like they were just worried about themselves.
I agree. I mean, like, especially with the money thing, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it'll financial ruin if we abolish the slave. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think people were family-oriented, but I think they just had their own agendas, and that's really what they cared about the most, was just themselves. So
I agree with that.
That was hard for me, but...
And then, like, I thought, and I don't know if you picked up on this, but, like, whenever I think about the government, like, portion of this question, I think of, in that scene, that one guy was like, I think the only way to make a change is going to be revolution. And Wilbur was like, if you ever want to talk about revolution again, you're not going to do it in front of me. Like, he maintained a high respect for his government, even though they didn't maintain high respect for him or his policies, which I thought was really interesting.
Oh, I didn't catch that. I like that. I mean, I remember him saying, like, I don't want to do revolution, but I didn't catch that it was because he really respected his government. I think that's great.
Yeah. Well, because, like, he said, I've pledged allegiance to the crown. And so, I mean, I took that to mean, like, the government is my be-all and end-all, kind of. Like, we're going to make this come through, but we're going to make it happen the right way.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, and we should probably do the first part of the question. So what role did the government, policy, and religious freedom play? I put that the government played a huge role because they were the ones that Wilbur had to convince and work with. You know, they're the ones that with the power basically to abolish the slave trade or not. And so I feel like they have played a huge part in that. And I think policy played a big role because policies were needed for the abolishment of slave trade, you know. And then I think they were just kind of like stepping stones to help Wilbur and his group accomplish that. But I think on the contrary, policies were also there to promote the slave trade, and so I think it also kind of made it difficult for him. So I think it kind of played in his favor and also against him at the same time. So
yeah.
Or did you have?
And then, like I said previously, like on the freedom of religion thing, like at that point in time, Christianity was freedom of religion. Like, you were allowed to be Catholic or you were allowed to attend the Church of England, basically. There weren't really any other options, which the Church of England and Catholicism is the same thing, in case you wanted to know, but minor differences. But and at that time, so like everybody was religious, basically. But still, it seemed like only Wilbur maintained his religion throughout consistently.
Yeah.
So I think that because there was that somewhat of a freedom of religion, he was able to maintain that in government facilities. Because we see that now where there's like no religion in our country being maintained in government at all.
But it's different. It's kind of too bad. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think that's good. Should we do the next question?
Yes.
All right.
These I think from here on the answers are a little shorter.
Yeah, I mean there's not much left, so.
Do you feel that Wilbur used his time on Earth well? Right, we're on 8, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And how did you see him showing the elements of consecration that Elder Christofferson spoke of? I'll let you go first because I feel like I'm kind of hogging it.
No, you're fine. That's fine. I can go first. Oh, I think he definitely used his time well. I feel like he worked with a purpose in mind, and his purpose was to abolish the slave trade. And I think he persevered, to accomplish his goals. I don't think he just lollygagged or did anything just wasted his time away. I feel like he spent his time, really just trying his best, pulling his resources together and doing everything he can to accomplish what he wanted, with his friends and his family. And I think, he consecrated his talents and his time and his agency to achieve what he wanted. And I don't know if this is part of it, but I remember he had a good voice. He was a good singer, and I think he worked on that too. So I think he's a good example of actually of doing something good with his life.
Yeah.
He used he was really good at communication and speaking, and he put that toward a good cause. So
yeah, he used his talents, his God-given talents. I'll be really short. I do feel that he used his time on Earth very well. He dedicated his time and his life to fight for the rights of others, and he even put them before his own health. Like, the man got sick and was still fighting for it. So I think that's pretty neat. And then Elder Christofferson said, like, a consecrated life is a life of labor. And Wilbur labored his whole life for these things. And then even after he achieved the abolishment, in the end credit scenes, it was talking about, like, he went on to fight for, like, reformed healthcare and education, and I think, like, something family related, even after he had slavery abolished. So I think, like, not only with the abolishment, but just in the rest of his policies, he did maintain his life very well, I believe.
Yeah, and well, I didn't write this down, but I think something that I really liked in the movie was him just playing with his little kid. You know, so when he wasn't advocating and working, he was still being with his family, and so I thought that was a good use of time as well. You know.
Yeah, and I agree with that. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Because yeah, like you said. Okay, that's a good stopping point for that
one. Okay.
Did you have any other profound thoughts or personal insights from the movie that were related to child and family advocacy?
Let's see. What did I put? Let's look at what I wrote. I don't even remember what I wrote. I think what this movie really taught me was just how much time and effort it's going to take to really change things. I think for Wilbur, because it took him 15 years or more, maybe almost 20 years. I think, and it just how strong he was. I think it just helped me realize that we're going to need that, to just even make a difference at all.
Yeah.
And I think it helped. I also loved how this movie just kind of showed how the importance of sticking to your beliefs and standing up for what you believe in. And this is kind of things we've already talked about, but I don't think there's anything else really profound. But let's see. But I think
that was pretty profound. Like to like, you would think like in this day and age that it's not going to be such a struggle to make change happen, but it is, and that's what that was the main thing. Like two things that I got from this, and I looked at it more from the historical aspect rather than from just the movie, even though they're like hand in hand. I was thinking like, how amazing is it that Britain paved the way for other countries to abolish slavery as well, even though at that point Britain was like they owned everything basically. I'm thinking specifically in America because America was its own country at that time. They kind of piggybacked, 75 years later almost on 65 years almost, a long time, a lot of years later, they decided, hey, we're also kind of against this. And so, if Britain hadn't paved the way, or if they had paved the way a little later, then we would be living in a much different society right now. Because what if they waited until 1865 to abolish slavery, and then it was 65 years after that America was like, slavery's done? We'd be living through the Martin Luther King Jr. time frame right now, in this time in 2018. And that's just crazy to think about how he did it at that time, which made it possible for us to be where we are now, to be making the changes that we need to be making. And it showed, that was the main thing, which I just, like, that was a profound thought to me.
That is pretty profound. I did not think about it. That's crazy to think about.
Isn't that just crazy?
I'm so glad that we don't have to deal with that for sure.
Oh, yeah. And then the other thing that it taught me, that it showed me, was that it's going to be a hard struggle, but and Wilbur showed that, you fight through your health, you fight through your sickness, you fight through your marriage, you fight through everything. If this is something that you believe in, and you believe this is what God believes in, there's no reason for you to stop until it's done.
Yeah.
So
it makes you think about, there's a bunch of scriptures, but I think 2 Nephi 31 something, enduring to the end, And I think that's what this is all about, just enduring to the end and just keep going no matter what you have to face or what you're going through. And I think Wilbur really showed that in the movie. Just he endured until he accomplished what he wanted, and even through just the persecution and then he was sick and just everything. I mean, we need to do that, like, with our advocacy efforts, and then just with life in general, just what we believe and endure to the end. So that's another thing I think I wrote down. But I didn't have a whole lot of super profound thoughts, but just
neither did I. Those were the only two that I was like, these could be considered profound, I guess. So I mean, one of them I felt like was really profound, but that was like the only one. But Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just feel like I took the movie mostly at face value. I didn't have a lot of profound thoughts other than he did it, I can too.
Right, yeah.
So on number 10, let's just move along. I'm sorry, I have to go visiting teaching in 30 minutes. And I just remember my companion just texted me. So, okay, so what was your understanding of the doctrine of the family at the beginning of the semester, and how has it changed? I personally, I don't think that my understanding of the doctrine of family has changed. I mean, I'm sure like something has, but I can't think of anything that hasn't. And for me, like, I think that that's because the family proclamation, which is what our class is basically based on, that's something that I've memorized, and like I view that as scripture, and there's nothing outside of that really that we went over in this class other than, you know, in the truth of marriage book or the truth about marriage book or whatever. Like we went over that a little bit, and that, whoa, what'd I do? I don't know what I did. Anyway, that was something that I guess brought me different insight, but I can't say that changed my perception of the doctrine of the family, though. That just kind of changed my perception of the lawmaking process.
Yeah, well, I agree. I kind of share what you're saying. I don't think my understanding has changed, although I feel like I have maybe a deeper understanding of it and more and maybe a greater appreciation for it.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what it is for me. I feel like I think I always know that like family was important, and you know the roles of the mom and the dad and you know husband and wife. I understood all of that, but I feel like this class kind of helped me realize just actually how important it is to society. I mean, and I will admit, I as a mom, I sometimes get wrapped up in thinking like, oh, what I'm doing is just like so lame. I'm not doing anything to contribute to society at all. Like, you know what I mean? Sometimes I feel like I contribute if I have like a job or something. And taking care of a 2-year-old is so thankless, and you know nobody to say good job or anything. And so I kind of degrade my role as a mom sometimes. And I feel like this class kind of helped me realize that what I'm doing really is good, and it contributes to society more than probably anything I could be doing, you know, just by raising and strengthening my family. And so I think it was good for me, you know, I just realizing that, kind of having a greater appreciation of my role and my husband's role and even just the role of my parents too, you know. So yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I got out of this was, you know, just having a greater appreciation for the doctrine of the family. So.
Yeah, so that's, I just got I guess like a deeper understanding, but yeah, same thing you said basically, except like I'm not a mom, but like I think it has prepared a way for me to have more appreciation for that role. Like that's, even though you say like you said previously that before this class you kind of felt like, what am I doing for society or whatever. And through this class, you learned that you are doing your part by raising your child in righteousness, because you're preparing that child to go forward and be a great human being that can make change as well. So that's that's like the understanding that I gathered that's new for me as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, being a mom is pretty hard sometimes. So yeah,
I understand.
It's good. Well, yeah, and if you ever do become a mom, like it's but I think
it's a challenge.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's good too, and like especially like what you said, if you're not a mom yet, you know, it does help you kind of prepare to, I think, to just realize how important that role will be in your life. And so yeah.
All right, last question.
Okay.
And that's my answer, not the question. Picture your spouse and children, current or future, and write down some thoughts about how they will benefit from you taking this class. And basically, this class, the HOA meetings influenced me more than the content. It like I said, it taught me like to shut up and listen, really. And that's not something that I'm very good at. That's a huge weakness for me. Whenever I'm talking to my husband, I'm talking to anybody else, I just, whether it be a fun conversation or a political or spiritual or whatever kind of conversation, I'm not very good at listening to other people. It's a weakness that I have. And so the HOA really taught me, like, and it's kind of funny, but it's not. It taught me to shut up and listen, and like the importance of other people. And I'm 27 years old. I should have an understanding of that already, but I just don't. It's not something that I've ever had to employ with such consequences, like a failing grade. So, it's something that I have already seen it start to benefit my marriage with my husband. We have decisions that we have to make, and I don't want his decisions. I don't like his decisions, but he's logical and his opinions are valid as well. And that's what the HOA that's what I took away mostly from this class, was the importance of hearing other people instead of just fighting, because sometimes you find you guys are saying the same things, but neither of you are staying quiet long enough to hear what the other one's saying.
Right.
And that's kind of what I learned.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I think learning to like just communicate and then I have a weakness too, like that with, especially with my husband. I always think I'm right, and my husband Daniel, he always thinks he's right, and so kind of it's a bad clash there, I guess. And so it's definitely good to learn. I'm still trying to learn how to do that, but how to be better with.
Oh yeah.
But I think talking with people in a group like this, learning to kind of listen to each other, and it really benefits you in more ways than you think.
Yeah. And something like some things that were said in the HOA meetings, like I took those and I was like, well, I think that that's wrong. But instead of being like, hey, you are wrong, I just kind of took them and I went and I did research on those things independently, kind of, and like thinking about it, that was kind of selfish. I probably should have shared that information at some point in the groups. But like, there was something about yoga being like, it's not okay for men to do it. And I looked that up. I'm like, oh, well, yoga was actually created by men. Like, women used to not be allowed to do it. So it is a man's sport. So, that helps me to think about, like, yeah, it was created in India by men, and like women weren't allowed to participate until like the 19 somethings, like 1940s or something. So, I took that and I'm like, because I do a lot of yoga. If I have a son in the future and he wants to do yoga with his mom, but he's worried about how other people are going to see him, like that's something that I can teach him so that he's comfortable doing yoga.
Right.
And this was the big one. Like when we went through, somehow Planned Parenthood came up, and like when I was talking about like I have to take birth control, and Planned Parenthood's the only place that offers it for me, at a price that I can afford, and so like I have to support Planned Parenthood because they offer me healthcare services. And somebody said that when the door's cracked for something like that, you're just allowing Satan to sneak in through there. And I was like, well, that's so rude. Like, I was like, that's really rude. I don't allow Satan in my house. Like, this is a health need. I need this.
Yeah, totally different. That's totally different because some people do need it. And I took birth control when I was, before I had my daughter. And so
yeah. And so, but I took it and because the HOA things have taught me like, okay, not everything's a confrontation. You learn from these things. I took it and I did some research and I found a website where they actually send out birth control for about $45 less than what Planned Parenthood actually sells it for. So I'm getting it for $15 a month. And I'm not supporting a program that requires me to compromise my morals. So, I was just like so amazed by that, because even though initially I was like, I hate these girls. They're so mean and like they don't listen to me and they don't understand where I'm coming from. Not like that. Like I'm a very rash person. So I'm just like, I get there and then I'm over it in like 5 seconds. But, I took that and I did research on that, and I was able to find something that was more beneficial, not only spiritually, but monetarily as well. So
Yeah.
I just think the HOA, I think that BYU Idaho, if they're listening, they need to change all discussion boards to HOA meetings because they're far more beneficial than discussion boards.
Well, I don't know if they're actually ever going to listen.
Oh, yeah. They're probably not.
They'll just keep doing it, and they're not so bad, I guess, but I definitely prefer meetings face to face. They're so much better.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's what I learned mostly from the class. Or like insights that I would take that would benefit my family.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
But
yeah, well,
that's it. That's all I got.
Well, what I put was, let's see, what did I put? Well, okay, so first of all, this class taught, I put down two different things. I put down that the importance of being informed and on political things, and I think I mentioned like in some other group meeting like that I didn't honestly like to be informed because I thought politics were ridiculous, and I was kind of sick of hearing people like bash each other, and oh my goodness, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of ridiculous. People are just acting like 2-year-olds. But anyway, and so I just didn't even want to bother with it. And here, before I finish what I'm saying, I'm going to plug in my laptop because it's about to die.
Oh no.
Let me just plug it into the wall really fast. There we go. Anyway, so what I was saying was, it's just the importance of being informed, and by me being informed, I can teach my kids to be informed so that they can be responsible citizens, and that's an important thing to do, definitely, and I'll do much better at it. And luckily, my husband is always staying informed. He's listening to talk radio probably 2 or 3 times a day, so he's luckily nice informed. But I think it taught me that I need to be informed as well, and my kids will see that, and they'll realize, okay, wow, we need to definitely be informed too. It's important. So that's the first thing that I wrote down, like as far as my family benefiting. And then the second thing I wrote down was, like I said earlier, just I feel like because I have more of an appreciation of just, the importance of being a mother, I feel like that will allow me to focus on my children more, focus on that role as a mother more, which could definitely only benefit my children. I was at this, it actually kind of reminds me of, let's see, what was it? When I was a little bit younger, we had the missionaries over for dinner. It was a little while ago, and he's kind of funny. He was like telling us his whole life story and everything, and just, I don't know, fun guy. But he was saying like, well, I had a rough past. I was into gangs. I was into drugs. I was doing all these horrible things. But he said that growing up, his parents were never around, and there was nobody to supervise. Like, both of his mom and his dad worked, and they didn't really work out of necessity. Well, his dad obviously had to work, but his mom worked not really out of necessity, but more because she had a career and she wanted that career. And so he said that his parents were never home, and like when he got home from school, and so he kind of got with a bad group of kids and did drugs, got into the gangs, and his parents were just never there to supervise. And so it took a long time for him to get his life turned around, but he specifically said that my parents weren't there for me, and so I just got into bad stuff. And not to say that my kids will do that, but I mean, I think it's so important for us to be there for our kids, like make a point to be there when they get home from school, or be just so that to listen. Like my mom, I feel like I like what my mom did. She was always there when we're home from school. And so if I had a bad day, I can talk to her, or, and she always supervised. And I'm sure it wasn't easy for my mom at all, but she's still doing that, with my 12-year-old sister. And so, I mean, I think this class has just helped me realize I need to focus on my family and be there for them. And it's kind of another thing and I'll be really fast, sorry, but another thing that it reminds me of was there was a mom that in the same ward as my parents. This mom, when she was younger, she had this big, huge career, and I don't remember what it was, but it was really, really good. She was making tons of money, and her husband were both making tons of money, and she got pregnant and she had her son, and she put him in daycare, for, and I don't think daycare is bad, but I mean, but what this woman did is she put her son in daycare from the time he was born up until he was like 3, and all day long, like 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day, like a long day. And so she was only ever there to put him to bed, and that was it. And so when she had another baby, she was in the hospital. She was super, super sick. And so she was like, when she actually was able to go home and take care of her kids, she was actually calling her son's caretaker, because she had no idea what he liked, no idea when his nap time was, no idea what calmed him down, and she didn't know her kid at all. And so she realized that, and then she, kind of changed her situation so that she could be home with her kids. So but she just said it was hard because she didn't know them, and so I want to be able to know my kids, and I want to be there for them, and how can I help them if I'm not there for them? And so that's another thing I think that I got out of this class. So
that's a good thing to get out of this class.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. So I think that's it.
I think so. And
that was the last. Yeah.
Do we just post the link? Is there a discussion board? I haven't even checked. I think there is.
I think there is as well, but I didn't see it, because I know in the instructions it says like post it on the discussion. Oh, okay. So you'll post the link on the turn-in on the submission page for the peer evaluation.
Let me find that really quick. Let me just stop the broadcast really quick.
Okay.